Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Kill! Kill! Kill!
Alan Seiler,
I don't have a quote, so I'll just have to say hello.
Veronica Dashel,
Hi.
Matt Sweatman,
Hi, guys.
and Elaine Sweatman.
Hi.
We have a full house today.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Now we'll be talking a little bit just about the first season of Star Trek, the original series. But first, we have any news, Alan?
There's so much stuff that happened this past week. So I'm going to just be selective and I'm going to be quick because we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. The first one is that Lower Decks has been nominated for an Annie Award, and that is an Excellence in Animation International. And Discovery.
Well deserved.
And Discovery has been nominated for both an NAACP and a GLAAD award.
Awesome.
So that is exceptional. And that's not too long before the next season starts. So that's a good bit of press for them.
Sure
Absolutely.
is.
There is, I'm sure most people are familiar with the series of novels that are the autobiography series, and there has been one on Spock and one on Picard and one on Janeway and whatever. And so they've just announced the next one that's going to be coming up, and that is the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko. And these are novels, because obviously these characters don't really exist for them to actually write an autobiography. This one is written by Derek Tyler Attico. He's a 2-time winner of the Strange New Worlds writing contest, which I think is really cool that they're going sort of fan, for this new novel. And I'm really excited about it. We're going to get some backstory on Mr. Sisko.
Awesome.
Alan, you said it's not real, but there's always that theory that every bit of fiction is actually a reflection of a real universe somewhere that we're just dreaming. We're seeing.
Well, I mean,
so Benny.
Exactly. It is real. I created it. So yes. Mike McMahon has released a few little teases about Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4. There will be a wedding. They are going to be visiting Orion.
All right.
And we are definitely getting more peanut hamper.
Yay.
And
hey,
I hope it's a Betazoid wedding.
Right? I mean,
that would be awesome.
If you're going to see it on any show, it's going to be on Lower Decks. So.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm really curious about visiting Orion. We've heard so much about Orion for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what could it be? Troy and Riker's wedding?
No,
they
already got married.
married. Yeah.
They got married already.
They're already married at that point?
Yeah, that was Nemesis.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
It'll be some goofy wedding. It won't even be a serious one, I'll bet you. It'll be like a spoof kind of thing or a decoy sort of thing. And then finally, and this one I'm kind of excited about, there is a new children's picture book coming out called To Boldly Go. Let me get the full title here. I just lost it on my screen. Where is it? Dang it. Okay, here it is. I got it. To Boldly Go, How Nichelle Nichols and Star Trek Helped Advance Civil Rights. And this is written by Angela Dalton, a former video game producer and now an award-winning author of children's books. And this is going to be telling the story of how Nichelle used her platform to make advances in the world, she used her station to do good. And I'm super excited about this. I don't know a release date yet, but that is on the horizon.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to that.
And this is coming just a couple of weeks after the announcement of the new foundation that they have started in her honor to advance science and STEM research and all kinds of stuff. So I'm excited about this. Good stuff is happening for Nichelle.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I agree.
And there's a lot more stuff to go over, but that's all I'm going to report on tonight. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Keith, we got some This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, like Alan, there's a lot of stuff, so I'm going to whittle it down to a couple of key things in Trek history. this is kind of important. In January 16th, 1967, this will come up in conversation. The first day of filming on an episode called "The Devil in the Dark,"
Ooh.
Ooh.
which I know ranks really high in some people's estimation. And it's a great episode. It's an absolutely classic episode about prejudice and jumping to conclusions. And also, I think we also know that a story about this was, I'll jump ahead 4 days, on January 20th, 1967, is while filming when William Shatner got a call from his mother that his father had passed away. And they were getting ready to shut down production for the day. And they said, why don't we just wrap production? And Shatner said, no, let's keep going. And so he kept filming that day, even though he knew his father had died. And as soon as they wrapped production, he ran and jumped on a plane and went to go bury his father. And I found a quote from Eddie Paskey, everybody's favorite Mr. Leslie, who said that a lot of people on the crew did not know his father had died.
Yeah.
And he insisted, like Leonard Nimoy knew, DeForest Kelley knew. And he said, that's a testament to the dedication of the man. We didn't know. And he kept going.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, I think. Also on January 16th, but go forward almost 30 years, 1995, UPN debuts a new series with an episode called Caretaker.
Wow.
And that series was Voyager.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah. Launched
sure?
a new network.
Are you sure it was Voyager? Are you sure it wasn't Platypus Man? Do you remember that dumb show?
Yes. Hey, or worse, Homeboys in Outer Space.
Right. with James Doohan as Pippin.
Yeah. Okay, jumping forward quickly. I say this because this is another seminal episode that will also be coming up in conversation. January 19th, 1967, Arena.
Ooh.
Airs on broadcast television. Yet another classic episode about prejudice and about watching your impulses, because it's one of those classic I want to kill but I'm not going to kill episodes. And also one of the first of the godlike aliens, the Metrons.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a good one. 1994. This is fascinating. January 19th, 1994. The episode Whom Gods Destroy debuts for the first time in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones that got pulled from the original broadcast when they sent the episodes over.
Yeah.
They were those ones that they chose not to broadcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Do y'all know the other 3 episodes that were not aired in the United Kingdom originally?
Was Patterns of Force one of them?
No.
Ooh.
Although that was that's one, but it was aired sooner, and that one didn't air in Germany for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
There's 3 others. This may give you a clue. The BBC at the time said these episodes will not air in the United Kingdom because they have unpleasant dealings with madness, torture, sadism, and disease.
Oh, wow.
Dagger of the Mind.
No. I'll give you a clue. One of them was one of the first interracial kisses in television history.
Okay.
Plato's Stepchildren.
Thank you for saying one of, because people always say it was the, and it was not.
Exactly.
Right.
The other one was the famous na 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 na, which is, remember that Kirk says no blah blah blah. You guys know what that episode is?
Yeah. Is that Miri?
That's Miri, because of the disease.
Yeah.
And then the other one they would not, and of course Plato's Stepchildren, which had S&M and all kinds of weird stuff. I can see they have objections to that mess.
Yeah.
The Empath. The Empath was deemed too violent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
But
great
all
episode.
all those episodes were finally aired in the 90s. So almost 30 years they were banned in Great Britain, which is fascinating.
That's strange
Okay.
that season 1 of Star Trek was more violent than the Daleks and Doctor Who.
Well,
Yeah.
but if you look at Plato's Stepchildren, they were literally trying to force those guys to whip women, and then one of them had a hot poker he was going to brand somebody with. So
Right.
that's pretty intense. And 2 last quick things. This is fantastic. January 21st, 1972, the first Star Trek convention was held in New York.
Nice.
And what can we say about that? This is only just a couple of short years after the series had been canceled. And of course, everybody knows the legendary story. Gene Roddenberry and everybody involved with this were like, is anybody going to show up? What do we talk about?
Right.
We booked this hall. Are we going to fill it up? And of course, you know what happened? It was so big, they had to turn people away. And now nobody can even conceive. We have so many cons. Nobody can kind of conceive of a con being something that you're worried about, especially Star Trek con. And the last thing, say that again.
I was gonna say, unless you're running one.
Exactly.
Good
Let
point.
me tell you some stories.
Yes. And the last one, I do want to shout out one birthday. 1920, January 20th was the birthday of one DeForest Kelly Bones McCoy.
I love him.
Yeah.
Yes. That's
Also,
this week.
Also the birthday of one Tom Baker.
That's right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, same day.
They share the day. They do.
That's cool.
Every year on the Wholanta page, I always post that image of Dr. McCoy saying that he's a doctor and doctor saying, I'm the doctor.
That's great.
Before we go too far, Wayne Beatty is here. He says,
Hey, Wayne.
Hey,
He
Wayne.
says, got here an hour early, yet I still came in late. That's okay. We were only a minute or two. It's no big deal. And he also says, wait, the empath was deemed too violent?
Yes.
There was some torture in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they hung McCoy up, literally hung him up and tortured him. And it was pretty nasty.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yay!
Anybody else watching? Just post comments or questions as we go along. So back to you, Chuck.
All right, so let's take a quick break to promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking about Star Trek Season 1. So stay right there. Well, if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on and keep talking. And we're talking today with Matt and Elaine Sweatman about Star Trek Season 1. And we wanted to have them on. For one, they recently, on their personal Facebook pages, have been posted their little journey watching the show together. And I know, Elaine, it was a first time watch for you in a lot of these episodes.
Yes.
And then Matt went through, I know, Matt, it wasn't a first time watch for you, but you went through and ranked all the episodes in a series of posts in our Facebook group, which was a lot of fun. And so we thought you guys would be the perfect people to talk to and come on and talk about the first season of Star Trek. So I guess starting with Matt, what is your experience with Star Trek this first season?
Well, I've never thought of them as being a separate entity because I always watched them with reruns where they were intermingled with other season episodes. So this is like probably the first time I thought of them, especially since we're taking a break before we go into season 2. This is the first time I've sort of seen them as a separate entity. So it is interesting from that perspective because it is a much stronger season than I think later seasons are.
Agree.
Yeah. So I guess you watched it when you were young.
Well, young adult.
Okay.
Yeah, because by the time I got into Next Generation, I went through and would always watch them on reruns, and eventually I not in order, so I don't know exactly when I completed watching them all, but eventually I know I'd seen them all. So
yeah. And then Elaine, how many of these episodes has you seen before, do you think?
Well, I've probably seen some from other seasons, but out of this season, I know 1, 2, 3 maybe I had seen previously.
If you can count them on one hand, it's pretty fresh.
Especially since back in the 60s, seasons were long.
Right.
You know, they are crammed with amazing episodes. And so if you see 3 or 5 of them, that's a small percentage compared to what we get today.
Well,
Yeah, that's like half of the season now.
No, well, nobody in my family watched Star Trek, so it was not on in my house. It wasn't, you know, my dad doesn't really watch TV, and it wasn't something my mom ever watched. So I may have seen one here and there, and then when I met Matt, then I know we watched a few. Sometimes they'd have a marathon, and we would just have it on, and so I've seen some episodes, but it's not ever been a concerted effort to make sure I see every single episode.
Yeah, right.
Doctor Who came before that, so
it's a very different experience when you've seen episodes and you've seen them in like whatever order, you know, whatever channel you're watching them on airs, you know, and they don't always air the same, and sometimes they're mixed up with other things, and then you sit down and watch them in order. It's a very different thing. It's very enlightening to see the way the show is made progresses.
Right.
As well as like the character development and seeing how characters sort of like, you know, becomes solidified throughout the season. They get a better idea of what they want and where the actor is going to go with it and things like that. And it's really a cool experience to do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Elaine, had you therefore watched things like TNG, DS9, Voyager, Discovery, Picard, and now you went back and watched the OS?
I have not seen any of DS9. Well, no, I take that back. We watched an episode, didn't we, Matt?
Recently, yeah, just the 100th episode when
Yeah, you have to see that one.
Yeah.
Matt.
That was your homework that week.
But
Doing Enterprise before
I've never seen any of Voyager. I had not seen
Wow.
I had not seen any of Enterprise until we started.
Yeah.
This project.
And now you're almost done with that.
But
Mhm.
for new Trek, I guess to say, like Discovery, Strange New
Yeah.
World, Picard, I have, and Lower Decks and
Prodigy?
Prodigy, I have seen all of those.
Right.
Wow.
So
That's
it's kind of-
amazing.
but you know what? It's kind of like what I did with Doctor Who. I started watching New Who and then went back and
Mm-hmm.
caught up. So I'm doing the same thing.
Very
You
good.
caught up on Classic Who?
I've seen all, yes. And we're watching
Wow.
through our second or third time with Classic Who. So yeah.
Nice.
So
Wow.
just
Nice.
one question, Elaine, out of curiosity, because it doesn't bother those of us who started watching it and so forth, but I do hear some people, especially people in their 20s who had never watched the original series, who started with TNG and stuff. I've heard a lot of people actually complain that they do have trouble with some of the bad special effects and so forth and the look.
Mhm.
Did
Sure.
any of that throw you at all when you looked at the original series?
No, because I have watched Doctor Who and I've also
Oh.
watched Red Dwarf. And Red
Take
Dwarf
offense
at that.
is really funky special effects. So no.
Okay.
Yeah. if
Bad special
anything-
effects don't bother me. I've seen Doctor Who.
Yeah.
and if anything, like when they put in the new effect, like the new CGI
Yeah.
effects, those
Mhm.
throw me off more than clunky one because I'm like, that just looks
Yeah.
too new and shiny. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen. I
interesting.
never
Yeah.
watched the updated original series things. I watched the original
Yeah.
stuff. So I never watched yeah, at least Star Trek didn't have a toilet plunger in it. So
No, well,
Hey. Okay, before we sorry. I just
No, I
want
was
to jump
gonna
in
say-
and talk about yes.
I was gonna say I have seen some episodes of Next Generation
Okay.
because I liked Will Wheaton, and so I was trying to see him.
Aw.
Aw.
So, yeah.
that is so awesome that you're on this journey of discovery for the first time. I mean, that is
Discovery.
cool. Yeah.
So Wayne, about watching the original series, said I had to sneak in and switch the channel while everyone was eating dinner. I was probably the only one who watched Star Trek
Wow,
Wow.
dude.
and The Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone.
Dude.
That's some
Good
good television right there.
Yep.
yeah.
And Bonanza and Wonderful World of Dizzy and Wild Kingdom.
I did love all that stuff. I gotta say.
Yes.
And we have an idea already of how Matt ranks the episodes because we followed along with him. So we're gonna come back to that. But Elaine, what were the standout episodes for you?
I have my little list because see, I have to make notes because I don't remember anything.
Is Silver Eyes on the list?
Yes, Silver Eyes. Yes. Where no man has gone before. Yeah. That one sticks out to me because I've seen it more than once.
Mhm.
So, along with the Corbomite maneuver, maybe I've seen more than 3. From the first season. That's that list. No, I feel like, and I was trying to be prepared, and my brain had gone
That's all right.
blank.
The Corbite maneuver is a great one. That's one of my
It
favorite
is,
episodes.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I do
Yeah.
like the little kid, and I remember seeing bits and pieces of that sometimes, just randomly.
Right.
You know, I always knew the little kid was at the end.
Yeah, Clint Howard, that was sort of a pop culture thing where you'd see
Yeah.
images of Clint Howard all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
We've
I-
watched that for New Year's before.
Yeah, that's my New Year's episode. if you time it just
That's
right,
right.
Baylock counts down, and then after the countdown, it's a toast. So it works out perfectly. It's a big
Yes.
glowing ball. It's great.
I do really like the one in because my brain had gone blank and I can't think of the name of it, but it's the one with Joan Collins in it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
That's a popular choice.
That's
Yeah.
City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes.
Yes, that one. Yes.
Yeah.
exactly. There's nothing controversial about picking that one.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
So-
Matt, I know you went through recently. You ranked the entire season, episode by episode. So sort of what were your criteria ranking the episodes?
Well, I started out by trying to put them in bunches, but the
Okay.
problem with season 1 is after you get past a couple of kind of clunkers, they're pretty much all great. So,
Wait,
Yeah.
Clunkers?
well, I'm thinking of the Man Trap and the Alternative Factor, but once you got past those two, they're all great, and so I had to like nitpick them, honestly.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, of course.
Find
Absolutely.
little things to differentiate. I mean, there to me, there's about 9 episodes. Some people might think 10 that are undoubtedly just great television, and then there's
Yeah.
a lot of really good episodes that are classics beyond.
Mhm.
Mm.
So what was your number 1 episode?
The City on the Edge of Forever.
Good choice.
A conventional choice, but I'd be dishonest if I didn't say it was my favorite. So,
But you know, a
Yeah.
lot of when you say that a conventional choice, but those things get chosen for very good reasons. You
Agreed.
know, all those ones like in modern Doctor Who, Blink,
Mhm.
those things always get listed because they are
Mhm.
that good. There's a
Yeah.
reason why everyone comes back to those episodes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
What was your lowest ranked episode?
the Alternative Factor.
Also a
Easy-
good choice.
Yeah.
Easiest choice in the list.
Yeah, get
Hence
the
my-
obvious ones out of the way.
Yeah.
Hence my kill at the beginning, Max. I knew that wasn't going to get ranked.
But you know, I have fun with that episode. Now,
Mm,
unlike
mhm.
other things, I'm not laughing with it. I'm laughing at it. But I have a lot of fun laughing at it.
Yeah, you can take a drink every time Lazarus has a different beard, and
Oh, that drove me up the wall.
you might
Yes.
get through the episode.
Happened?
Or falls off the rock side because he falls 3 times, which is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. They keep going back to the planet, and there's one scene where I swear they're filming them setting up for the scene. They don't know they're being filmed, where for no reason Lazarus just starts running up the hill for no reason other than to set up the fall he's about to do in the next bit.
Well,
Right.
to turn to the comments for a moment, our buddy Wayne commented that it's curious that no one has mentioned Charlie X, and
Oh,
that's an
dude.
episode that I like a lot that I think is underrated.
Yeah.
I love that episode.
I love it
And it-
too.
It's also one that people will mention a lot as far as the gender politics in that episode
Yeah.
being dated.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, Elaine, did you bump up against that in some of these episodes?
Yes, but at the same time, I knew I was watching a show that was filmed in the 60s. And
Right.
so that's just what it was.
Mm.
Then, you know, and to be able to look at it and know that things have changed and just, you know, it's sort of
Right.
like a history lesson in a way.
Mhm.
Right.
Kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I watch. Because I watch a ton of 1920s and 1930s movies,
Mhm.
and if there are black people in it, they're usually like comic relief or really offensive servants. But it's a lesson. It shows one you get. I think you need to know how people think at a certain time. I don't think you should hide that. But it also shows where you
Mhm.
come. And at the same time, what's fascinating, Elaine, you mentioned Where No Man Has Come Before is one of your greatest episodes. Of course, it's a sad story, but what an amazing thing that episode at that time initially had a woman on the bridge who everybody listened to. Of course, then she got bounced
Yeah.
for several decades.
Yeah.
Right.
But what a bold move at first to start out like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And another early episode that has sort of similar criticisms is Mud's Women. And Veronica,
Oh,
I know
yeah.
that you watched that for the first time not too long ago, within the last
Yeah.
year. Well, I mean, what did you think of Mud's Women when you saw it for the first time?
It was a 60s episode. It wasn't that much different than any other 60s episode or any current TV set in the 60s. I mean, if you look at Mad Men, it's kind of the same thing.
Right. Yeah. What
So-
did you think of
Yeah.
Mud's Women, Elaine?
Well, my note was that I put women trafficking. I had like little parentheses. and notes.
Nice.
Right.
Or maybe I should have also put like mail order bride because that
Right.
was kind of
Yeah, that's
you know,
really more
Yeah, that's really what they were going for. And Roddenberry had done a Mail to Bride episode as part of Have Gun Will Travel as well. That was for me better. But I mean, there's some of these early episodes that for me they sort of paint a different picture of life on the frontier of the Federation. You know, this is one where these ladies had grown up in remote outposts. You know, and they mentioned those brief things about these remote outposts where they grew up. You know, and then another one is Conscience of the King, where you get to see a little more of civilian life out on the Federation frontier than you normally do.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Back on. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say that's always strikes me as a very atypical episode. It's not a very typical. You know, it's not like any other episode in the season.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
There aren't many episodes like it.
The Conscience of the King.
Oh, I love that. I adore that episode. It's so incredibly good because it's such powerful acting. I mean, the guy who plays Kodos / Anton Karidian is just amazing.
Yeah.
I love O'Reilly down in the decks where somebody takes that like Formula 409 bottle and poisons him while we're singing to him.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
I wish he had been on more.
Yeah.
It just breaks my heart. I just think he's the coolest character.
Yeah. Me too.
Wayne says, thanks to Mad Men, the 60s and 70s were finally explained to me. Nice. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Back on Mud's Women. One thing I did kind of like about Mud's Women was it did have some good humor. This is where Spock's character was still being fleshed out because he puts on a big ass smile when he goes into Kirk's cabin. Remember, he says the captain and crew of the vessel, and he has a huge smile on his face because he knows Kirk's about to see those women, which I always find. And that was what I think that was one of the first that may be the first usage of the word Vulcanian, which I think was only used once or twice because that's when he has Spock. He asked Spock if he was part Vulcanian. Right. And from a personal thing, and I said this before, that Harry Mudd is not the Harry Mudd that Discovery gave us. And I don't like this new. I don't like that psychopathic, murderous Harry Mudd in Discovery. I like this goofy Harry Mudd who looks like a bad pirate.
Yeah, but you could not do a character like that
when
Discovery was being made and it have any sort of, the audience taking it seriously in any way. It just would not play at all.
Right. Yeah, I just didn't like they made him go full serial killer or whatever the heck he is. But I agree.
But the other side of that is that if you can't do that kind of character, then why do Mudd?
Right.
Just make a new character or something.
Yeah. I like both versions of Mudd. Just want to put that out there.
I will say I'm not a big Rainn Wilson fan, but I did like Mudd. His Mudd more than
for Harry
the
Mudd.
original.
Well, I think he's a type of character from the westerns of the time. You would see characters like that quite often. So it seems natural they would have brought him into Star Trek in the 60s.
Oh yeah, totally. Because audiences understand that kind of character in the 60s, and that's the sort of show that Gene was making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he was making it to fit in with that kind of television.
Wagon Train to the Stars.
Yeah. And Star Trek very much grew out of the Western, and you could early episodes. I think that's even more apparent than it is later on. There's a lot of like the Man Trap when they beam down and they've got those sort of like holsters for their for their phasers,
right?
And even when you speaking of that, Charles, in the Man Trap when Kirk shoots Crater, it's like a bullet ricochet sound. Remember that? You hear the phaser, and there's a bing sound.
One of the most overused sound effects because how do you know they've shot a gun unless you hear that ricochet sound?
Yeah.
Right.
And Matt, it's funny you said that Man Trap wasn't one of your favorite episodes. As you know, of course, it was the debut episode for the series. And Gene Roddenberry and Gene Kuhn and several people also didn't care for that show being the debut. And Gene Roddenberry even said he didn't like the music in that episode. He said this is way too much like some kind of standard monster show, and that's not what Star Trek's supposed to be. So he even hated the music in that episode.
Yeah.
See, I don't hate that episode, but I do think it was a weird choice to be the first debut episode because I sort of feel like you're just kind of thrown into everything, which that's not a bad thing, but it's a weird set up like you're supposed to get to know people in the show, and you don't really. It's sort of
Yeah,
it would have been better later in the season, probably.
Yeah, I think they probably put it out first. For one, it was done, and like
Right.
Corbomite had so many visual effects, it took forever to get done.
Right.
exactly.
But there's a monster in it as well, which as far
Right.
as if you're a network and you're trying to program this, you're thinking it's a kid's show. There's a monster in this one.
Exactly.
But then I think a lot of what you do learn about the characters is not important information later about McCoy's lost love and his, Spock and Uhura and things like that. Like if you were introduced to the character through this episode, you don't need to remember any of this because it's never going to come up again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was that when you say Spock and Uhura? Although was that the thing when they said there's they reported one dead and Spock just says acknowledged and Uhura goes off on him because that dead person could have been Kirk? Was that the episode? I think it is, right?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
I think I do know
remember,
what you're talking about, but I don't know if it's that one or
I
not.
think it's the episode because they told Mr. Spock they were beaming up a landing party, and they said they report one dead, and Spock emotionlessly says acknowledged.
Yeah, that was a man trap.
Yeah, that was it. So that gave us some good insight into Spock's personality because Uhura's like, how in the world can you say that it could have been Captain Kirk? And he gives her that lecture, which is basically my emotional reaction won't change the facts that have happened. And they had just had that little tete-a-tete about her kind of flirting with him. And then she walks away pissed off because after all, he's a cold, emotionless Vulcan. So I thought that was a good interaction there.
Now, Matt, you recently, I mean, we talked about you had the experience of ranking these episodes publicly in a public forum. And if now Star Trek fans are not prone to argue about things or to be opinionated.
Oh boy.
I'm kind of wondering what that experience is like for you. With getting the feedback, or do you like to get, people commenting back, or is it you get a lot of pushback on episodes? Like, what are some memorable moments of that experience for you?
Taste Armageddon.
We have a Taste of Armageddon. I'll say that the thing I learned most from this watch through is there are more fans of A Taste of Armageddon than I ever knew.
Dude, yes.
No, I enjoyed that. I wanted that. I never claimed this was trying to be definitive. I don't have that kind of arrogance. This is just my opinion.
Right.
And I wanted people to tell me, hey, where am I got it wrong? Where do you want this episode to be? So I certainly got that feedback, and I'm very pleased about that.
Well, fortunately, you at least heart a non-7. So
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you're listening on the audio podcast, Matt's his name on the screen is I Heart a Non-7.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Matt,
and I do like the episode. There's just so many good ones, and they'll lower than anybody else would have it apparently.
It's like you have to. There's 39 episodes in the season, so something has to be 39, something has to be 38. But when you really think about it, it's like you have a 10-way tie for number 1, at least a 5 to 7-way tie for number 2. So it's not like something that falls down at number 8 or 9 or 10 means that it isn't that good.
Right.
It's just that there's so much good, especially in that first season. But Matt, here's a question for you, because when I wrote my first book, Doctor Who's Greatest Hits, I started it by doing the same kind of thing that you were doing, where I was just leading up to the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. I was doing a post every day where I was ranking my 50, what I think is the 50 best Doctor Who stories ever made.
Right.
I spent so much time on that list and where things should go and why should this go above that one, and what if I swap those two around? How much time did you actually like rework the list and think, well, this one is good, but is it better than that one? And what should be number 1 and what should be number 15 or whatever?
I wanted to go with my gut. I mean, because I've seen them enough to where I don't need to analyze them that much.
Yeah.
So what I did was I said, I had an idea of the grouping and just go with my gut. And I figured that was somehow more honest. Sometimes if you overthink it, you might regret it later when you still be overthinking it later. So I think I popped out the list in about 20 minutes.
Oh, well.
That's cool. Sometimes when you look at movies and TV show episodes, it's almost like fine restaurants. There may be a restaurant that has the best meal, but you're not going to eat it as much as, I don't know, McDonald's or something. And so I like what you say about your gut, because you're right. There's some episodes that just grab you. Like for me, Balance of Terror just grabs me. I don't even think
my
about
God,
it.
yes.
I adore that episode. End of
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
So Veronica and Elaine, what did y'all pick for your number ones from the first season? Or if you had to just name number one, which one
Nope.
stands out more for you?
I have no idea. The one with Cook's brother.
Okay. Operation
one?
Annihilate.
Operation Annihilate.
The one where Spock gets the thing on the back of his back and he goes all nuts.
That's right.
Yeah, I encourage the
The one
two-word
with flying
description.
flappy things.
That's the
That's
one.
it.
Yes, yes.
That's the one. How about you, Elaine? What would you say the number one for you?
My favorite, probably the City on the Edge of Tomorrow. I
Forever.
remember the name forever.
You didn't.
No, I didn't. I was
City on
close.
the Edge of Tomorrow was
Close.
yesterday.
Keith, what's your number one?
Whoa, it jumps back and forth, but you're not going to believe this. I think it's Balance of Terror.
Okay.
Why wouldn't
honestly,
we believe that?
I
Yeah,
believe you.
you know what?
I mean, come
As
on.
Matt was just saying, as Alan was saying, if you ask me next week, it might change because as Alan
Sure.
said, there's like 10 tied for top 10, but Balance of Terror, it's got everything that Roddenberry wanted for Trek. It's good science fiction. It is phenomenal drama. Forget
Yeah.
science fiction, it's phenomenal drama. And it also has a great message about prejudice and so forth.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think the Romulans have ever looked as good before since. When the Romulans were first introduced and you see that guy saying, Enterprise, we're a mile deep in an asteroid of solid iron. And then you see that huge plasma ball, which by the way is so fast the Enterprise can barely get away from it at high warp. What an introduction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the introduction of the Romulans as looking like Vulcans is still one of the greatest shocks in television history because I saw this way back when I had no clue that was the case. So for me as a kid, that was a shock. I didn't know that back in the day. I just adored that episode.
Yeah.
How about you, Alan?
It would probably have to be Balance of Terror.
All right.
That is just an incredibly well-made, well-written, well-acted episode. But a very close second, and it might flip-flop on certain days, and I'm not saying this just for Mad, but A Taste of Armageddon is so good.
We think alike.
I love that episode so much. And then
Yes.
the other contender for the number one spot is Devil in the Dark.
Yeah.
Superb
Right.
episode.
Which is the one where Spock's dangling from a tree and laughing. Is that in season 1?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it
I like
is.
that one too.
Yeah.
That is
Dangling from a
this side of paradise.
That's right.
Yes.
Sure.
I call that the hippie episode.
Wayne's
She hasn't
num-
seen the third season episode yet with real space hippies.
Exactly. Wayne's top pick is Conscience of the King.
Wow, that's
Love
a good
that
pick.
episode,
That's a
yeah.
good pick and an out of the box pick.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I'm like you guys. I would go between Devil in the Dark, City on the Edge, Balance of Terror. Like they're the top ones. I think. I don't know. One that I love the Corbomite maneuver. I just love that episode.
Yeah.
I love
Mhm.
everything about it. So I mean, if we're talking about like which one I would rank like the highest quality, it'd be one of the three I just mentioned.
Yeah.
If you're talking about just a favorite that I could just sit down and watch anytime. I mean, I could. Most of the season, it's easier to name the ones that I
Season
can't.
1.
Well,
Yes.
it's so true because even the quote unquote lesser ones are so good. Galileo 7 is phenomenal.
Right.
Arena is good. Court Martial is so much fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Space Seed. I mean,
Court
come
Martial.
on. You've got Space Seed in that episode. I mean, in that season. I mean, and the best one of all, Alternative Factor. Kidding.
I mean, it's such a strong season.
It
I mean,
really is.
I mean,
It
to this
is.
day, I would rank it as the best season, the best first season at least of Star Trek. It's among the best seasons of Star Trek for me.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Absolutely.
it's hard to top. I mean,
Yeah.
I would go all the way to like DS9 season 6, looking for a
Yes.
season that, or maybe Next Gen season 3 is up there. Like it's like, which is amazing because they were just making it up as they went along. There was no Star Trek universe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That may have also made it easier because there wasn't any
Sure.
lore to
Oh, sure.
adhere to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there wasn't any fanboy expectations that they had to either either maneuver around or try and match or yeah.
At least until it was
Fanboys
on the
word.
air. I'm sure they were complaining by week 6.
Well, they weren't until 1972 when the very first convention happened. Up until then, everything was just freeform.
Right, the mimeographs went wild. When the Klingons came back with the wrong makeup, man.
Right.
See, Aaron to Mercy is in season 1, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And I love that episode. Where would I rank that? I love that episode. I love everything about that. The Organians. Right. Here we go. Another lesson, because I mean, one of the greatest scenes in all of Trek, with all series for me, is at the end when Kirk is screaming and says, "We have the right." And what's his name cuts him off and says, "What? To wage war? To kill life on the planetary scale? Is that what you're fighting for, Captain?" And Shatner is such a great actor, because I think later on Shatner got a real bad rep for that overacting, because he's really a good actor. And Matt and Elaine, one thing that we've talked about on this show is, as you guys probably noticed, especially like the first half of the first season, when William Shatner is a much more serious actor, much more kind of a stern captain than he was in later episodes. You see that man can truly act. And since I started there, all the talking like this, I hear it, but it kind of goes over my head. It goes off my back, because I remember that Kirk. And in Era of Mercy, when he shames him, and you see the look on Kirk's face, he goes, well, and he's so helpless looking when they basically say, "Are you fighting for a war?" And I love that lesson. At the end of the episode, he even tells Spock, "I'm embarrassed because they called me out. I wanted to have a war."
Yeah,
I love that episode.
Then you make a good point, Keith, and I'm curious, like to Elaine especially. I mean, I'm sure you went in with some kind of expectations of what Star Trek was, the original series. You know what I mean? And you've seen some episodes, but were there any surprises for you watching it when watching watching the actual show, like episode after episode?
I think, going to what Keith was saying, that I'm so used to like the parodies of Shatner and Kirk doing the one word at a time thing, but it was he is a really good actor. I was kind of like, okay, this is not as cheesy as some people may think it is. So I was impressed with that. So
I was gonna ask almost the exact same question that Charles just asked, but I was going to ask it specifically about characters. Was there anything about the characters that you didn't expect, or was there a character that impressed you that you didn't think would, or was there like a side character that you thought, oh man, like Riley, like that guy's fantastic. He should be in more episodes. What did you? And I'm most curious about Rand.
She's a mystery to me a little bit. Like I'm not quite sure where, like how she was. I feel like she was supposed to fit in somewhere better than she did sometimes. Yeah. Like I'm fascinated with her hair too.
You can ask Moxie all about that.
But I did like seeing how they kind of tried to figure out what Spock was going to be, or who Spock was going to be. And how his makeup adjusted and he became not quite as green. And that was interesting to see that. But then we also had the little game going where if Matt could find Leslie somewhere in the background.
Where's Waldo? You're playing Where's Waldo with Leslie every time you watch the episode.
But yeah.
Mr. Leslie, the famous, "I'm sorry, sir, we're all waiting to beam down to the planet." That was from This Side of Paradise. That was the famous, "This is mutiny, mister."
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's so cool. How about you, Veronica? That's what Alan's asking.
What?
Watching the early episodes of Star Trek, I mean, were you surprised by any of the performances, or?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew the traditional Shatnerisms, but I also, I never really, I mean, when I watched the shows on reruns, it was usually TNG that was on reruns, not the original series. So I don't think I'd seen a lot of it before Chuck, but I knew enough about Shatnerisms to know that it's overdone. So I didn't really have any expectations of any of the characters.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think the difference with Elaine is she's seen some of the newer versions of the characters before having gone back to see them as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because I like you're talking about with Shatner, and I remember Chuck, you were talking about the Corbomite maneuver. That's the famous. What's the mission of this the ship doctor? He gives this really great speech. That's really good. And I like. There's a really throwaway scene from the Man Trap, but that's the Shatner. I remember there was a scene where he says, "I don't like mysteries. They give me a bellyache, and right now I got a Whopper." That's not the same Kirk that you see later. He's so serious and kind of stoic in a lot of ways. And then, of course, in Balance of Terror, that great scene with McCoy where he's like, I look around this bridge and I see those faces looking at me. What if I guess wrong? I mean, what an incredibly great actor. And then, like you said, with Wayne, with the Conscience of the King, I mean, Shatner's acting against another actor who was a Shakespearean actor in real life. And that man is just holding the stage. And I put William Shatner then against Avery Brooks and Patrick Stewart for good acting then. But you're right, he's become so unfairly maligned as the over actor later on, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I don't think he helped himself by doing some of the, and this has nothing to do with Star Trek, but doing some of the recordings, like some of the quote unquote songs that he did. I think that he was maybe even playing into his own caricature.
Right.
I think that doing that kind of stuff, like the Beatles covers that he did and things like that, and Rocket Man and all that crap. I think that he was doing this is what people think I am.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't have any definitive thing to say about that, but that's kind of my sense of it, because when you look at his acting, he is so much better than he gets credit for.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Elaine, something else you said I thought was interesting. You said about Spock's character hadn't been defined. And I don't know if you know some of the history of that. Of course, one, they hadn't really defined his character because in the cage / the menagerie, and of course we get to the Muds women, Spock straight up smiles. I mean, just a big old broad smile. And then of course there's the famous line that people like to quote when they were beaming down the Talos and he runs for it and yells, "The women!" Which Spock would usually act like that. But one of the things, in addition to them truly trying to define his characters, is that Leonard Nimoy had said that in the first episode with Jeffrey Hunter, that Jeffrey Hunter was so low energy and kind of not really engaged. He was so stoic that Leonard Nimoy was bouncing off of Jeffrey Hunter, and he found himself automatically being more emotional because Jeffrey Hunter, he felt, wasn't giving enough emotion. And everybody says that when William Shatner was hired to replace Jeffrey Hunter, everybody, even George Takei, who later hates him, they said he bounded onto that stage, onto that set. And he was Kirk from the moment he bounded to the stage. And Leonard Nimoy said that Shatner had so much energy as Kirk that he found himself automatically lowering his emotional pitch as Spock. And he always said that Shatner made him a better Spock, which I think is just fascinating.
It's so interesting, when you can do that same comparison at the very beginning of Voyager too, because when Geneviève Bujold, they have her the little bit of material that she filmed on the DVDs, you can see it, and when you watch that, and then you watch Mulgrew come in and do those same scenes, it is a world of difference.
You're right.
Like, you see Janeway immediately when Mulgrew steps into that role, like she just owns it.
That's a very good point. Yeah, she had a lot of energy.
Wayne says, honestly, the Rand character was treated like the normal eye candy of the 60s. She was there until they ran out of ideas for her. He also says, Rocket Man. Oh, God.
Now, speaking of Rand, there's all these things where you don't know quite what the story was. Is the truth really that she was written out of the show because they didn't want to have a love interest holding Shatner's character back? Or was it because of her problems in her personal life?
Yeah, she went into it in more detail in her autobiography, and I don't have those details in front of me. But there was also someone working on the show, and there was a sexual assault, but that she was the victim of, and then she was sort of written off the show. But I don't want to half remember the details of that. But check out Grace Lee Whitney's autobiography, and she gives her account of what happened behind the scenes of Star Trek.
Yeah,
interesting. one real quick thing, Elaine, you talked about. I thought you'd answered Chuck's question earlier about how do you and Veronica look at women back then, and you say it was what it was, and it's so fascinating because to me as a Black person, I can see all these people like Mr. Boma on Galileo 7, who actually gets on my last nerves, and other Black guys on the show who are great, and sometimes just them being there is good, and of course Dr. Daystrom. But one thing I find so fascinating is such a small scene, but so critical with Yeoman Rand. Is in it's either the episode, is it The Naked Time? Yeah, I think it's The Naked Time, where Kirk calls Rand to the bridge and he tells her to take the helm. And remember, she goes, sir, he goes, take the helm. And if you think about that, in the 60s, for a woman, especially a woman who was a yeoman, who in other episodes was literally giving him coffee that she heated up with a phaser, she's helming a starship. That's huge. And later on, Uhura helmed the starship in Court Martial. Yeah. So that was huge back in the day for that to be shown there.
Yeah. I think one thing about Star Trek is it was trying. It was trying to be progressive. They're just in the past. They're trying to be
exactly.
Exactly.
They're walking that line of having to fit in with what the television landscape is and the expectations are, but at the same time doing something different and stepping outside of that.
And dealing with their own preconceptions and their own biases as people who a lot of them born in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm glad when I look at an old show and it's backwards. I mean, I would hate to look at old shows and it was more progressive than we are. Like, what would that say? The good old days when women could speak. That'd be awful.
Oh no.
Well, the only time you'll see that, Chuck, is if you watch 1920s and early 1930s pre-Hays Code movies.
Yeah, the pre-code.
And and I am continually stunned how much more mature those movies were, and then we hit the 1940s Hollywood.
Right.
I had a question for y'all, Veronica and Elaine and Matt. Was there a guest character that stood out for you? Was there one guest character? Whether it was Khan or Edith Keeler, which one was your favorite that stood out for you in the first season?
I really like Ricardo Montalban as Khan, but I also really like Sally Kellerman in Where No Man Has Gone Before.
I agree.
She was good in it, but she was also just really gorgeous. There was something about her presence on the screen that was just very. I don't have words for it, but I really liked her in that. So those are probably my two favorites.
That's very cool. You don't hear people talk about Sally Kellerman very often in answering that question, and so I'm glad that she gets a little shout out.
Yeah. Right. How about you, Matt?
This season had so many great guest stars. I mean, it's amazing. That's one of the reasons why it's so strong. But the one that stood out to me this watch through, and I think he carried an episode that I think is really average otherwise, but he elevates it, and that's John Colicos' core in Aaron Nebraska.
Wow.
Average episode? What?
Okay. We're getting to my nitpicking and ranking, how I rank them, but
here we go again.
I know, right?
I think there's a little bit of tell but not showing on this episode. And I know a lot of it is they couldn't show the Organian appearing on the different home worlds as they described. But I feel like when they said they gunned down the Organians outside, they could have showed them outside and gunned down some. They're examples of things I thought they could have shown instead of told. But again, it's nitpicking. But what is not nitpicking and what's great is John Colicos is amazing.
Right.
Absolutely. He owned that role, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did.
How about you, Veronica? Who would you say would be your a guest star that really stood out for you?
Balak.
Great.
The little kid one.
He's so funny. Yeah. To this day,
Clint Howard, I'm sorry.
Yeah. How many times have all of us seen that episode? To this day, if you put it on, when you hear that man voice come out of that baby body and he does that, he puts his head back and it's just so hilarious. I love it every single time.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's slightly creepy too, in an odd sort of way.
Not creepy in a creepy way, but creepy in an awesome way.
Yeah.
What's even creepier is when he, as an adult, went and did it again and got dressed up.
That was hilarious.
It was. It was.
And we're almost at time, but I did have another question.
Oh.
Elaine, I mean, watching like the Menagerie or the Cage, whichever one you watched, and I guess you'd already seen Captain Pike on Discovery.
Yes.
But I mean, what was it like? Well, I mean, did you watch the Cage first, or did you watch the Menagerie first?
I don't know, Matt. Which one did we watch?
We watched the two-parter Menagerie.
Okay.
We're gonna watch the Cage when we finish the third
Good.
season because we don't want to end on Turnabout Intruder.
As it should be.
Wow.
That's the correct answer. Well done.
You're in for a treat watching the original Cage. It's so different in so many ways. You're in for a treat.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think of the flashbacks, the version of Pike of number 1 of Spock in those days?
I don't know that I have an opinion.
Okay.
Because when you say Captain Pike, to me, my head goes. I see Anson Mount. I don't.
100%.
Wow.
I see the hair. Yes.
The hair, baby. That man's got some righteous hair. I'm telling you.
I Space Daddy. You know.
You know it. You know it.
So yeah, that I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
That's my answer.
I think that's a great question. I think that's a great response because for me, Anson Mount really is the new Pike, but Pike is always Jeffrey Hunter.
I'll flip that question for Matt because Matt, I mean, I know you'd seen the Menagerie before Strange New Worlds, before Discovery. I mean, what do you think of how they've reinterpreted those characters, bringing them to television?
I think I have to compartmentalize in that I can't think of it as the same continuity. It's just too different. But I don't think about it too much. I just go with it. I do prefer these versions of Spock and Pike and Kirk to the Kelvin versions. I think they do a better job of giving us an alternate version than they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to get in real quick that Wayne chimes in with talking about the 60s environment. Rod Serling left TV because of what he called the dumbing down of television, referring to the quality of the writing that was happening. So
I can see that because so many people who good point, Wayne, so many people who worked on Star Trek also worked on Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and Alcoa Presents. And I also think we talked about this before, you also can't overestimate the fact, I think it was you who said it, Charles, the length of episodes back then. They had a significant amount of extra time to tell one story.
that's true.
Yeah.
And they also didn't have B stories a lot back then.
Exactly right. Episodes tended to be like 50 to 52 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's insane when we get 42 to 45 now.
Right.
Yeah. And one story, not a B story, and fewer commercial breaks.
Exactly. And you know what? I was thinking today about Far Beyond the Stars. And I was thinking that well, that's just the best episode of television ever made. Not just Star Trek. I mean, television. And you know what? It never occurred to me before this morning in the shower. Don't ask me why I was thinking about it in the shower. That it's one of the only at that time, modern Star Trek episodes that did not have an A, B, and or C storyline. It was one story.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a complete.
Yeah, I typically don't like B stories. I mean, there have been a lot of great B stories in Star Trek history, but I would actually prefer just a standard A story. That's me. I kind of prefer it like that. I missed it when it's just one single story. And we had some like Darmok was one story. There's not truly an A or B. We've had a lot of good ones like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any episode from the first season that we haven't really mentioned yet? Is there anything that...
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I think one stands out, and I think it's awesome and amazing that nobody mentioned it, and that's the Doomsday Machine.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
because
you were so
that
right.
is
That's season 2.
Oh, season 2. Well, that's why. Okay.
There you go. That's why we didn't mention it.
I don't remember that one.
Man,
Okay.
no spoilers thrown there for a second.
I can't believe I wrote that down.
I was scrolling through the list of episodes thinking,
You cut that
I
out.
don't think that's
You
it.
cut that out, Charles.
There you go. Edit. All right.
All right. Well, I mean, guys, thank you for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
And now, if you're enjoying hearing Matt and Elaine, they're going to be back we're going to be doing this again next week. And
Yes.
next week, we're going to be talking about season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise.
Yes, finally.
Yeah.
I know.
So excited.
And guys, we really, 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 really wanted to thank you because we didn't expect y'all to do this. I mean, you just it was this really cool organic thing where you started watching, and then now like you got there's these great conversations, and you notice how like I'm like 2 or 3 in the morning, I'm always responding to your Enterprise watches, and then like Charles was saying, we didn't expect you guys to rank them, and I love the whole interplay with you and Alan and A Taste of Armageddon, which is just awesome. So this is you have really seriously you've added a lot to the group with this because we didn't expect this, and it's been so thoughtful, and it's so great to see all these different opinions like with Veronica. Because like for me, it's impossible for somebody not to have seen every episode of the original series like 25 times, but I have been watching the original series for 51 years nonstop, and so it's wild and cool to see new people and to get these different opinions. And so we really want to thank you for doing it because you're really adding a lot to the group with this. It's been so much fun.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, shucks.
And now, a couple of quick announcements. Our crossover episodes with the Cosmic Pizza podcast will begin at the beginning of February. So if you're not following the Cosmic Pizza podcast feed, their episode is going to come out sort of, I think, first week of February, but they say February 1st, I believe, and that we had a long and a good discussion about the possibilities of extraterrestrial life in the universe.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of fun.
It was
And then
great.
we did an episode with them, which will be sometime in the next week. I have an idea of when it's going to come out, but we'll see. And that'll be probably in the second week of February, but also the second week of February, we'll be launching on the first day of the Captain Picard Week Podcast Festival. We're gonna be part of the festival. We'll be over on their channels, talking about Star Trek, hopefully meeting some new friends. And we'd love for, folks who follow our show to give the support to those shows as well, because the whole thing is about just all these podcasts coming together and, maybe you'll find, a new podcast that you love.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Right on.
All right. So Matt, where can people find more of you?
Well, as we mentioned before, we're very active on Facebook. If you're in the group, send us a friend request and you can see we call it live Facebooking instead of live tweeting episodes as we watch them. And we're currently about a third of the way through the 3rd season of Enterprise.
No,
Awesome.
Fourth season. I'm sorry. I'm
Doomsday Machine. I don't feel so bad now.
I'll lose a point on that one. And then we're going to get back into Star Trek, the original series, with the 2nd season of Star Trek after that.
Oh, wow. Can't
And
wait.
we'll have you back on to talk about TOS
Yes.
season 2.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
How about you, Elaine?
you can find me at Monkeying Around on Twitter at Monkeying Around.
Oh, you have to do the arms.
Monkeying around.
We don't have a monkey. Wait, no, we do have a monkeyingaround.com. Excuse me.
Oh, I felt nerdy. I was doing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let me start over again. I'm on Twitter at Monkeying Around. I have a Facebook, Monkeying Around. I'm also on Facebook as Elaine Sweatman. And yes, that'll be all for tonight.
How about you, Alan?
CosmicPress.com. KOZMICPress.com. You will find the answers to all your questions there.
How about you, Keith?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and the Facebook groups, primarily the ESO network groups.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
And
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
that's right.
There you go.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
The women.
Hey, that was good. That was good.
It kind of works. I like it.
I'm glad that was from the 1st season. I wasn't sure.
Well,
That's debatable.
All right. See y'all next week. Bye.
Okay. Bye.